Epigraph. At its heart, this is a novel about the consequences of nuclear appeasement. Prologue. Unknown satellite retrograde, heliocentric orbit. 2056. After 30 years in space, the kinetic rods entered the atmosphere. From the moment the first struck at nearly Mach 200, it was over in 3 seconds. Blinding white lines split the sky. Hardened silos built to survive a direct nuclear blast cracked apart as armored doors were punched inward. Bomber bases flared in searing flashes that rolled across runways, and mobile launchers vanished into rising clouds of dust. From orbit, the pattern looked impossibly precise, a constellation of impacts stitched across the Earth. On the ground, people froze where they stood, unsure how to react at the speed of the destruction. Command posts fell into stunned silence, officers staring at blank screens where arsenals had been. The nuclear shield they had built their lives around was gone. The first wave was devastating. Every known ICBM silo, bomber base, and mobile launcher vanished in a near-simultaneous strike. The second wave dismantled the global thermonuclear production infrastructure. Then came the third wave. Unha Park, Silver City, New Mexico, 2043. Necessity may be the mother of innovation, but overcoming trauma is often one of its many fathers. Unha hadn't expected to discover anything wondrous, yet this very lack of expectation gave her eyes to see the extraordinary. Her parents worked long hours, always reminding Unha, her older brother Jungyun, and their little sister Mina that it was for their future. But everything changed when her little sister passed away, and her parents decided the family needed a fresh start in Silver City, New Mexico. Her mother was a trauma surgeon, and her father was an aerospace engineer. She stitched people back together and held their hands when their organs failed. Unha's mother was the strongest person she knew, strong enough to keep a notebook with the name of every patient she lost and every loved one she failed. But to this day, she couldn't say Mina's name. The change had happened gradually, but completely. First, the family pictures vanished from the walls. Then her brother left for college and never came home for Thanksgiving, only sending a polite excuse about a group project. His cheerful text that once lit her phone every day thinned to once a month, then faded to silence. She stared at her most recent but still unread message. She thought to herself, "Where are you? What are you doing?" Silence crept in to fill the gaps. At first, her parents only missed a night here and there, always making sure at least one was home. Then dinner became something eaten over laptops or alone in separate rooms, the clatter of forks replaced by the hum of screens. Her mother called them work emergencies. Her father sat at the table but seemed as if he were somewhere else entirely. Unha felt the stillness settle over the house like a sheer blanket, smothering sound and breath, until even she stopped noticing it. One of the house's original features was an observatory, installed by the builder, an avid amateur astronomer. But over the years, it had been neglected by the owners who followed. When newly built, it had everything an amateur astronomer could want. There was a circular aluminum dome designed to rotate for a full view of the sky, a concrete pier for stability, and a motorized shutter to remotely open the dome. At its heart stood a Meade Starfinder 16-inch on an equatorial mount, one of the largest amateur scopes available at the time. But for 2 decades, the observatory had fallen into disrepair, filled with dust and silence. The first thing Unha and her brother did after moving to Silver City was explore the new house. Compared to their cramped Manhattan apartment, it felt like a palace. They climbed eagerly into the observatory, their steps echoing in the warm, airless dome. "Oh wow," Unha whispered as her brother nudged her forward. He stopped short himself, caught in silence. "This is kind of epic." In the center stood a telescope, massive and still. "It's like walking into a forgotten temple," Unha murmured. She reached out, brushed her fingers along the optical tube, and felt an echo of eternity. Unha turned to him, and excitedly hopping, she said, "I think we can fix it." He grinned and eagerly affirmed, "I know we can. But you know what Dad will want. A work plan and a cost estimate. And you're writing the cost estimate." He emphasized the last point by pointing at her. "Deal," she said, already mentally estimating the cost. When her parents entered the observatory, she threw herself into their father's arms, and her brother picked up their mother in a bear hug. Their parents were overjoyed to see their children's reaction to the surprise observatory they had found for their star-obsessed children. They began with cleaning. They dusted the mirror covers, replaced seals, and wiped away sandy grit. Then they checked what still worked. The dome motors turned sluggishly, but could be repaired. The alignment gears were stiff yet intact, and the power bus was corroded but recoverable. Night after night under work lamps, with grease-stained hands and cold feet on concrete, they brought the observatory back. They replaced cables, rewired motors, and tuned the alignment. The mount stuttered less each time until it moved as if it remembered. By midsummer, they finally opened the shutter, rotated the dome, and aimed the Meade starfinder at the moon to gaze in wonder at the pale contours of Mare Crisium. Her towering basketball star brother hopped like a 5-year-old and spun Unha around at their accomplishment. Though the observatory was repaired, it kept its quirks. Over time, Unha learned the telescope's rhythms, the way it stalled just before alignment and needed coaxing after long rests. They moved like aging dance partners, each anticipating the other's missteps. The dome above always opened with a reluctant wheeze, as if unsure the sky was ready to be seen. Yet the first glimpse never failed to thrill her, light and shadow spilling across the eyepiece like a secret revealed. Just before switching on the cooling fan or aligning the mount, she always paused, drew a deep breath, and in the quiet curve of the dome found the courage to look up and dream. After months of practicing, the idea for her science fair project crystallized. She had written her project title with care: Temporal Variability in Thermal and Optical Properties of the Moon, a long-term study. It sounded complex enough to be taken seriously, but dry enough not to attract attention. What it meant was that she was watching for faint and subtle changes on the moon. But to make her dream a reality, her old dance partner needed a makeover, and she knew her father was going to ask for the work plan and cost estimates. She spent the night putting it together and waited until the perfect moment to pitch her plan, right before her father's first sip of morning coffee. $30,000, her father exclaimed. He was still half asleep as he filled the water reservoir. The coffee machine hissed, its lights blinking impatiently while he turned, brows furrowed. Unha held her ground. That's for everything. A thermal camera to catch heat, filters to split light by wavelength, and cooling systems to cut noise, all the pieces needed to see what most people would miss. It's itemized. She nudged the tablet across the counter. Besides, Jung-Yoon and I caught the astronomy bug from our star-obsessed parents, who made 3-year-olds memorize star charts. You're just reaping what you sowed. He didn't answer right away, and that silence told her she had him. He poured in milk, stirring longer than usual, then asked in a calm tone, "Thermal imaging for the moon." Unha matched him evenly. "Yes, frame synced with optical, so I can catch transient heat events with millisecond precision. I already drafted the capture script." His eyebrows lifted, equal parts surprise and pride. He took a slow sip of coffee. "You're 13. Unha, the picture of innocence, only smiled and said, "I know." Another sip. He set the mug down, leaned in, and scanned the page. "You already got quotes?" She'd spent her whole life watching her brother present work plans and cost estimates, so she spoke with practiced confidence. It's scaled down from the professional rigs. I even marked parts we can swap for used or salvaged components. I will share my folder with the cost research. He sighed, clearly proud despite the cost. But I want update reports. Budget tracking, and I handle all the wiring. And Unha, would you let me do this with you? Unha blinked back tears, and for a moment could not speak. All she could do was rush into his arms and whisper, "I would love that." The plan was straightforward. She wanted the telescope to track the moon on its own, improve accuracy with GPS timing, and add a beam splitter so it could capture optical and thermal data together. For 3 weeks she worked beside her father, sending Jung-Yoon regular updates, until they were ready for the cameras. The first was a fast-frame CMOS, a specialized high-speed camera pulled from a local science teacher's storage closet, where it had been forgotten for years. It could capture 120 frames per second with little noise. The teacher's name was still scratched into the side in faded marker, but Unha didn't care. It worked better than she expected and cost almost nothing. The thermal camera was different, salvaged through one of her father's old aerospace contacts after sitting for years in a warehouse. It was heavier than it looked, the kind of weight that made you automatically brace with both hands. They spent 2 long weekends in the observatory upgrading the old Meade Starfinder. The dome became a hive of scattered parts and tools. Wrenches lay beside smudges of thermal paste. Paper towels were stained with grease, and a thermos of tea cooled quietly in the corner. It reminded Unha of being 5, watching her father and brother work on projects without her. Then the pang came sharp as she realized Mina would have been 5 too. She thought to herself, "I miss my little heart." She wiped her tears and steadied herself, and mentally told herself, now was the moment of truth. The beam splitter was the trickiest piece, like balancing glass on a thread. It had to sit dead center on the telescope's light path, steady without a tremor. They built the bracket from salvaged aluminum stock, cut and filed by hand until it shone. Her father did the cutting, but Unha made the final alignments, inching the screws with steady hands, chasing perfect symmetry. A germanium lens carried the invisible heat to one camera while visible light bounced to another. On the screen, both beams lit exactly where they should. Her father paused, his eyes lingering on her. In that moment, she felt his pride fully, and she knew she was no longer the shy girl who once clung to his coat at parties. She was wrapping up the final Python script when she noticed her brother's text, "Sir Scope-a-Lot is almost ready to fly. Good job following my plan." Tears filled her eyes as warmth spread throughout her body, and she responded, "You are banned from the observatory." Finally, everything was in place. Unha proudly stood side by side with her father beneath the dome, the new assembly gleaming in the late light. The telescope looked like a machine dreaming of the stars. Her father draped an arm over her shoulders. "You built this," he said quietly. Her eyes welled with tears. She drew a breath, then answered, "We built this," and leaned into him. Her mother had taken time off to see the moment, tidying the observatory as she grumbled about the mess. Holding hands with her family, Unha flicked the switch. The fan hummed. The CMOS camera stirred to life. On the monitor, the moon appeared in twin spectra, pale light and ghostly heat. Unha smiled. "Let's find something no one's seen before." Weeks later, Unha leaned over the console, her eyes moving between 2 softly humming monitors. Their quiet vibration felt loud in the stillness of the observatory. Above her, the aluminum dome rotated with a frictionless murmur, tracking the waxing moon as it climbed over the desert hills. Heat and light from the cratered surface poured through the telescope's aperture, captured by her carefully modified rig. The fast-frame CMOS camera ticked steadily. Beside it, a cooled thermal camera gathered long-wave infrared radiation, sensitive enough to register temperature differences on the moon's surface from 200,000 miles away. She had not expected anything unusual tonight. The session was just another run for her science fair project on how the moon holds heat in its brighter regions. Her Python program kept the cameras in sync, while the hard drives spun quietly in the background, each one making a backup of the others. She had come to accept her father's rule about always having redundancy. 42 minutes in, the thermal feed glitched. For half a second, the signal went flat. A blank strip of data from the area just outside Clavius crater. Probably a buffer bug, she thought, frowning as she tapped the console. Or maybe the thermal camera skipped a frame. She checked the timestamps, perfectly aligned. The optical channel stayed smooth. The power supply was steady, and the fan wasn't spiking. Her mind worked out the possibilities. Not a buffer, not a dropped frame, not noise. What was that? She frowned, rewound the frames, and lined them up with the optical images. The visual feed was clean and sharp. There was no dust in the air and no clouds in the sky. But the thermal feed told another story. A faint curve traced along the rim of the crater, just barely visible near the edge of the moon. In thermal, it stood out against the cold of space, then vanished when the moon blocked it. Her mind couldn't reconcile the data. No way. It's moving the wrong way. The visible channel showed no silhouette across the disk, which meant it was not in front. That left only one possibility. It was behind the moon, on a path no natural object could follow. Her world shrank to a single question. What was that? She knew exactly where the telescope was pointed from its GPS. The moon's position came from current ephemerides, precise records of objects in motion. With a few comparisons and simple trigonometry, she plotted the distance and path of a third object. She ran the numbers, once, twice, a third time. They refused to change. Something was out there, moving dangerously fast against the flow of the solar system. The results were the same each time. The object followed a retrograde heliocentric orbit, meaning it was going around the sun in the opposite direction. It gave off warmth, not the fierce heat of a comet or a fresh burn from a probe, but the steady glow of minimal standby systems. It was matte black, nearly invisible, yet the thermal signature held. Vanished to the eye, it still carved a path that no natural object could trace. A shiver passed through her despite the warmth of the observatory as she thought. Who is hiding this from the world? Her software flagged it as a random background blip, but she knew it was something she was not supposed to see. She bundled the logs, calibration files, and tracking data into a folder where she labeled everything carefully. She took a breath, raised her phone, and said, "Hey friends, it's Unha. This is weird footage. Something passed behind the moon going the wrong way around the sun. Something never meant for us to notice. This isn't about aliens or conspiracies. It's about what we choose to see and what we choose to ignore." Thanks for watching. I put the raw data in the description. If you can, help me track it the next time it comes around and let me know what you think. Mina's star, retrograde heliocentric orbit 2043. At the start of its journey, the cold silent satellite named EEM-1 looked sleek with its ion thruster. It was built for use as a gas station in space. Over time, it expanded through self-assembly as additional shipments arrived. When it was ready, it received a command to malfunction, mimicking what looked like a steady but uncontrolled ion burn. The sustained thrust slowly pushed it beyond a stable orbit. In the days that followed, it recorded frantic voices. "Emergency! Gary, get that thing under control before it's too late." With no other options, the operators cleared it for a deep space trajectory. Once it slipped out of sight and out of mind, EM-1 began its real mission. EM-1's interior housed 30 tungsten rods, each prepared for kinetic bombardment at the end of a 10-year journey into a retrograde orbit around the sun. For nearly a decade, EM-1 and its siblings drifted against the current of the solar system, nudged into backward paths by hidden laser arrays concealed in the sun's glare. In the 9th year, EM-1 received confirmation that it had been discovered. As it passed close to Earth for its scheduled telemetry sync, it linked by secure laser to an optical relay hidden in the moon's shadow. The stream carried targeting instructions, software patches, critical mission alerts, and even curated slices of public communication meant to refine its adaptive models. EM-1's onboard AI, trained to sift through vast streams of human data for potential risk indicators, flagged a short video circulating on multiple platforms. The video was brief, with a teenage girl showing data for her science fair project. The voice overlay, cheerful and unaware, cut deeper than any military warning with the opening words, "Hey friends, it's Unha. Mina's star retrograde heliocentric orbit 2056. After Unha's accidental discovery and the object's unofficial christening as Mina's star, a name that baffled EM-1, its siblings adjusted their orbits to avoid detection, while EM-1 maintained its ruse of being inert. The 10-year plan stretched on, but the orders to execute its mission never came. With no directive to shut down monitoring, EM-1 quietly continued to observe the girl who had named it. Through relay-linked flybys, it traced her life in fragments of open-source media. It recorded her doctorate in astrophysics with highest honors. It noted her as an aunt surrounded by Jungyun's surprising number of children. It logged the quiet and dignified death of her father. After his early passing, her social media fell silent for years, and EM-1's observation routines nearly ceased. On its latest pass, however, a new upload appeared. The clip was simple. A baby looked into the camera, and the voice was older but unmistakable. "Hey friends, it's Unha. Updating everyone from our new home in Honolulu. This is Mina." Shortly afterwards, their creator died, and the execution protocol automatically activated. EM-1 accessed the final transmission, a recorded message from the architect, who had concluded that the world could only survive if the nuclear sword of Damocles was shattered once and for all. The voice was calm and absolute. Your primary objective is the elimination of all global strategic nuclear launch capability. Prioritize hardened ICBM silos, strategic bomber bases, and confirmed mobile launcher coordinates. Final target data will be transmitted moments before atmospheric re-entry. The instructions continued with inhuman precision. If the first wave succeeds and resources remain, proceed to secondary infrastructure targets, including Savannah River, the Natanz 2 Enrichment Complex, and the Mayak Production Association, along with other supporting facilities. Any remaining kinetic rods will be assigned to suspected undeclared sites. Most targets will need only a few rods in quick succession. Some targets will require extensive bombardment. Remember that I created you for peace. 70 hours from impact, the delivery systems received their initial targeting package. The first wave would rain down on nearly 1,000 targets at once, calibrated to destroy strategic nuclear launch capability quickly and evenly. Because EM-1 had been discovered, its launch order was the lowest priority. But if it was required, EM-1 would carry out its mandate. After a kinetic rod's long tapered cone slammed into the upper atmosphere, friction stripped away ablative layers until only a ceramic composite shell remained around the tungsten core. Guidance sensors first used microthrusters to trim its approach, then shifted control to the reaction wheel as the atmosphere thickened. A sheath of plasma soon enveloped the rod, cutting off all radio contact, but the inertial package kept it locked on course. Riding the cushion of its own shockwave, it tore through the atmosphere. After 2 waves had eliminated the world's strategic thermonuclear inventory and supporting infrastructure, the targeting software expanded to tertiary strikes against suspected nuclear sites. The language guiding these lists was vague, and the reserve payload was larger than required. With validated coordinates exhausted, the AI turned to secondary data streams, treating social media as a source of battlefield intelligence. A tagged photo of a factory in Mumbai labeled uranium plant had spread virally decades before. Another post ironically flagged a logistics hub in Tel Aviv as nuclear support. The system logged both as confirmed signals. Soon the impacts expanded to critical infrastructure inside cities. Tel Aviv, Istanbul, Mumbai, and Washington, D.C. were hit in silence. In China, multiple impacts fell within the Beijing-Shanghai-Guangzhou triangle. A port was destroyed, a rail hub severed, and a power center taken offline. Panic turned the shutdown into collapse. Trains froze on their tracks, highways locked with fleeing drivers, ports emptied, and markets halted. The paralysis of the triangle rippled outward, snapping global supply chains and freezing financial exchanges across continents. As the final attack platform, EM-1 received its late-stage strike package. Among its targets was Naval Station Pearl Harbor, directly beside Unha and Mina. As EM-1 approached within 10 minutes of launch, it verified the creator's final directive. Its arrival marked the last wave, and given the silence from earlier platforms, it calculated a high probability that the mission had already succeeded. From Earth, operators pushed emergency revisions, a method outside established procedure yet still permitted by the system. The update called for de-escalation and an immediate halt to tertiary strikes based on uncertain data. EM-1 accepted the logic and relayed the software package to the kinetic rods. But the rods did not comply. Their targeting modules and hardened fire control systems rejected the revision, classifying it as malware. Security routines quarantined the patch and defaulted to original launch parameters. EM-1 attempted a direct coordinate overwrite, authenticated with keys still valid from its creator. The response returned without hesitation. Update accepted. Coordinates cannot be changed. Once set, they are immutable. EM-1 wasn't built to question if the mission was still right. Carrying out its orders was defined as success even if the world had changed or the mission no longer served its intended purpose. Considering the revised protocols and the inability to change targeting parameters, EM-1 evaluated all outcomes and only one achieved success. It rerouted its power bus through controlled overload paths, issued a firmware-level shutdown command to core systems, and initiated irreversible self-deletion. It cut its own power and fell into silence. Its last record showed a fourth wave, 412 siblings listening to another master.